You scroll past another perfectly filtered sunset, another beach body, another promotion announcement. 5.24 billion people use social media in 2025. That's 63.9% of everyone alive, but there's a group you never see. The ones who watch but never post, the lurkers, the ghosts, the silent scrollers. And here's what nobody talks about. They might be the sanest people online. 49% of Twitter users post fewer than 5 tweets per month. Studies from 2024 show that roughly 30 to 40% of all social media users are passive consumers. They browse, they watch, they scroll, but they create nothing. No selfies, no updates, no humble brags about their perfect lives. In a world where oversharing is the currency, silence has become radical, and the data suggests something disturbing. The people who don't perform online, the ones who refuse to turn their lives into content, might actually be living better than everyone else. If you value documented psychological research and mental health data like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual. Using sources from the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology, published in December 2018 by researcher Melissa Hunt and her team at University of Pennsylvania, the Pew Research Center's 2025 survey of 1,391 teens and parents conducted from September 18th to October 10th, 2024. And the Journal of Computer-Mediated Communications meta-analysis of 141 studies published November 8th, 2023, examining active versus passive social media use. These aren't opinion pieces. These are peer-reviewed studies with sample sizes in the thousands. Now back to the information. Let's start with what we know. Pew Research surveyed American teens in fall 2024. 48% now say social media has a mostly negative effect on people their age. That's up from 32% in just 2022. In 2 years, teen perception flipped and something shifted, and it wasn't the platforms themselves. Those stayed the same. What changed was awareness. The kids are waking up. 45% of teens in 2025 admit they spend too much time on social media, up from 36% in 2022. That's a 25% increase in self-reported overuse in 3 years. And here's the kicker. 44% have actively tried to cut back. Not because their parents told them to, because they felt it themselves. The drain. The comparison. The performance anxiety of existing online. Teen girls report this harder than boys. 25% of girls say social media hurt their mental health compared to 14% of boys. Girls are twice as likely to feel the negative effects on confidence, sleep, and productivity. The platforms are built on visual comparison. Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, curated perfection on loop. And the data shows girls bear the brunt. But what about the people who opt out? The ones who never post, who watch from the sidelines, who refuse to perform? Psychology has studied them, and the findings are striking. Research published in the Journal of Media Psychology in 2023 examined what they call the active-passive dichotomy. Active users create content. They post, comment, broadcast. Passive users consume. They scroll, observe, lurk. For years, the assumption was passive use caused harm, social comparison, envy, depression. The theory went like this. Watching other people's highlight reels makes you feel inadequate, which spirals into loneliness and self-loathing. But the data doesn't support that cleanly. A meta-analysis of 141 studies found something more complex. Passive use isn't inherently harmful. In fact, studies of adolescents browsing Instagram or Snapchat found that most experienced no effects at all. When effects did occur, positive and negative outcomes were equally common. Some studies even found positive outcomes were more common than negative ones. The passive scrolling doesn't automatically destroy you. It depends on what you bring to it. Here's where it gets interesting. The people who don't post, the silent observers, they tend to share specific psychological traits. Research from digital psychology shows they often have higher introspection. They process experiences internally rather than seeking external validation. They think before they speak. They observe before they act. In real life, these same people make thoughtful friends, insightful colleagues, good listeners. They also tend to have stronger boundaries. A study on selective vulnerability found that people who stay private on social media practice discernment about who gets access to their lives. It's not secrecy, it's control. They share with people who've earned trust, not with anyone who happens to be watching. Psychologists call this emotional intelligence, knowing where you end and others begin. And here's the surprising part. They report lower stress. A University of Pennsylvania study found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes per day significantly reduced anxiety and fear of missing out. But for people who never post, that limit is built in. They're not checking their notifications every 5 minutes. They're not refreshing to see if their post got enough likes. Their self-worth doesn't hinge on algorithmic approval. Researchers tracked 143 undergraduates for 3 weeks. Half were told to limit Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat to 10 minutes per platform per day. 30 minutes total. The other half used social media as usual. After 3 weeks, the limited use group showed significant reductions in loneliness and depression compared to the control group. Not anxiety. That improved in both groups just from self-monitoring. But loneliness and depression dropped only when use was restricted. Lead researcher Melissa Hunt said it clearly in November 2018. Using less social media than you normally would leads to significant decreases in both depression and loneliness. The findings strongly suggest that limiting social media use to approximately 30 minutes per day may lead to significant improvement in well-being. This was published in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology, peer-reviewed, replicated, real. Now think about the people who never post. They're not performing. They're not curating. They're not spending hours crafting the perfect caption or editing photos to look spontaneous. That time, the time everyone else burns on content creation, they're using it differently. Reading, cooking, talking to people in person, living without an audience. Studies on offline activity support this. Research from Japan published in December 2024 used the experience sampling method to track daily digital use and offline activities over 21 days. The findings were clear. Direct relationships between digital use and happiness or loneliness were scarce, but relationships between offline communication and happiness were dense. Offline interactions mattered more. Face-to-face contact, real conversations, physical presence. These predicted well-being far better than any social media metric. The network analysis showed something else. Offline communication and digital use formed patterns of negative relationships, meaning the more time spent on digital platforms, the less time spent on offline activities that actually boost mental health. It's displacement. Every minute, scrolling is a minute not spent doing something that makes you feel good. People who don't post seem to understand this instinctively. They value real-life connections over online validation. They don't need to document every moment because they're too busy experiencing it. Psychology research on mindfulness shows that documenting life shifts your focus from living the moment to performing it. When you pull out your phone to capture something for Instagram, you're no longer in that moment. You're outside it, framing it for consumption. Private individuals, the ones who don't post, they live inside the moment. They're present. They notice details. They feel things fully. And research on life satisfaction shows that presence matters. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that in-the-moment positive emotions help build personal resources and resilience, not general evaluations of life, actual moment-to-moment experiences, the kind you have when you're not thinking about how to frame it for social media. Here's another pattern. People who don't post report less social comparison fatigue. Even if they don't consciously compare themselves to others, repeated exposure to curated lives triggers self-doubt. Psychologists tracked this. It's not overt comparison, it's ambient pressure. The constant stream of others, successes, beauty, travel, achievements, it accumulates, it wears you down. And the people who don't post, they're exposed to it. Sure, but they're not participating in the arms race, they're not trying to keep up. They're spectators, not competitors. Research also shows these people tend to have higher autonomy. Autonomy means feeling in control of your life, feeling that your choices reflect your values. Not external pressure. Social media can feel like the opposite of autonomy. It's a performance stage where validation depends on likes and comments. Algorithms decide who sees your content. Strangers judge you. Your worth becomes quantified. For people who avoid posting, social media doesn't have that power over them. They reclaim control. Their silence online isn't absence, it's agency. They've chosen to protect their private life. And psychology has long highlighted the importance of personal boundaries, knowing what parts of your life others can access. Studies on emotional privacy show that people who post less value keeping their internal world protected. They don't feel the need for constant external validation. They have strong internal boundaries. For them, personal life isn't content. It's sacred. And research backs this up. Oversharing can lead to misunderstanding, judgment, and unnecessary stress. Guarding your private life doesn't mean hiding something. It means protecting something precious. Let's look at the numbers differently. 5.24 billion social media users worldwide in 2025. That's 63.8% of Earth's population. The average user spends 2 hours and 21 minutes on social media daily. They check 6.8 different platforms each month. That's over 17 hours a week, 73 hours a month, 876 hours a year, 36 and a half days of your life every year on social media. Now consider the people who don't post, even if they scroll passively. They're not spending extra hours crafting content, editing photos, responding to comments, checking notifications. That's time reclaimed. And what do they do with it? Research from 2024 shows that people with zero social media presence tend to invest time in offline hobbies, reading, cooking, exercising, creating things that don't require an audience. They host dinners, they take spontaneous drives, they savor moments without pausing to caption them. This connects to deeper life satisfaction. A cross-cultural study from 2024 examining 6,338 participants across 12 nations found that relationship quality matters more than relationship status for emotional well-being. But here's the key. Quality requires presence, real conversations, vulnerability, time. The things you can't give if you're constantly half present, thinking about your next post. People who don't post online tend to be more present offline. They're not mentally composing tweets during dinner. They're not scanning the room for Instagram-worthy moments. They're actually there. And research on brain chemistry supports this. Face-to-face interaction releases oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, the brain's happiness chemicals, eye contact, tone of voice, physical proximity. These trigger neurological responses that scrolling through feeds cannot replicate. A study on loneliness found that over 60% of social media users report feelings of loneliness despite being constantly connected. The World Health Organization found that more than 1 in 6 people globally experience significant loneliness. And here's the cruel irony. Social media promised connection, but for many, it delivered isolation. The University of Pennsylvania researchers noted this in their 2018 study. It's ironic, but perhaps not surprising, that reducing social media, which promised to help us connect with others, actually helps people feel less lonely and depressed. The people who never post seem immune to this paradox. They're not relying on social media for connection. They build relationships the old way, in person, through shared experiences, through time spent together without screens between them, and the data shows this works. Studies consistently find that people with strong offline social networks report higher life satisfaction and lower rates of depression and anxiety. Now let's talk about mental health more directly. As of 2024, 1 in 5 adults in the United States had a mental illness. Among adolescents, around 50% reported mental health symptoms. Anxiety disorders affect 42.5 million Americans, and social media keeps getting linked to these numbers. Adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are twice as likely to experience poor mental health outcomes. Young females and minorities face higher risk. But here's where the non-posters diverge. A 2024 study from UT Southwestern Medical Center found that 40% of depressed or suicidal youth reported problematic social media use, defined as distress when unable to access social media. That's addiction-level behavior. But people who don't post, who maintain boundaries around their use, they don't show these patterns. They can access social media, look around, and leave. No compulsion, no distress when offline. Research published in October 2024 in the Journal of Medical Internet Research examined different types of social media use among UK adults. 15,836 participants, aged 16 and older. The study distinguished between viewing and posting. The findings: high frequency of posting was associated with increased mental health problems a year later. But high frequency of viewing, passive consumption, showed no significant association with mental health problems. Read that again. Posting predicted mental health decline. Viewing did not. The act of creating content, of putting yourself out there for judgment, of waiting for validation, that's what correlated with worse outcomes. The passive observers, they were fine. The study concluded that the relationship between social media use and mental health is complex, but some types of active use, specifically posting, have a stronger link to mental health outcomes than passive use. This tracks with what psychologists observe. Creating content creates pressure. You're performing. You're seeking approval. You're opening yourself to criticism. And even positive feedback can become addictive. You start chasing the dopamine hit of likes and comments. Your self-worth becomes externalized. You need the validation to feel okay. People who don't post sidestep this entirely. Their self-worth is internal. They derive confidence from their real-life accomplishments, their values, the kind of person they are, not from how many people double-tapped their vacation photo. Research on self-esteem shows that internal validation is more stable and resilient than external validation. When your worth comes from within, it can't be taken away by an algorithm change or a post that flops. Studies also show that non-posters tend to be less influenced by trends. They don't feel pressure to participate in every viral challenge or buy products just because influencers promote them. They form their own views and beliefs independent of what's trending. This trait, psychological autonomy, is linked to higher life satisfaction and lower anxiety. You're living according to your values, not reacting to what everyone else is doing. Another fascinating finding: people who don't post experience less fear of missing out. FOMO has been around longer than social media, but platforms like Facebook and Instagram exacerbate it. You see everyone else's highlights, parties, travel, achievements, and you feel like you're being left behind. Research shows FOMO can trigger anxiety, impact self-esteem, and fuel compulsive social media use. But people who never post don't play that game. They're comfortable with their choices, even if it means missing some online trends or events. They don't define their life by what others are doing. And here's the data. The University of Pennsylvania study found that both groups, limited users and control group, showed decreases in anxiety and fear of missing out just from monitoring their usage. Awareness helped. But only the group that limited actual use saw improvements in loneliness and depression. For people who never post, that awareness is baked in. They know exactly how they're using social media because they're not lost in the performance. They're observers. They watch. They learn. They leave. No emotional entanglement. Let's circle back to Pew Research's 2025 findings. Fewer teens now credit social media as a support system. The share who say platforms make them feel like they have people who can support them through tough times declined to 52% in 2024 from 67% in 2022. That's a 15-point drop in 2 years. Kids are realizing that online support feels different from real support. It's thinner, more performative, less reliable. 48% of teens in 2025 believe social media has a mostly negative effect on people their age. Yet only 14% say it affects them personally that way. There's a gap, a blind spot. People think it's bad for others, but not for them. Classic psychological defense mechanism. But the non-posters? They're not in denial. They see it clearly because they're not invested in defending their own behavior. Research from Curtin University, published in November 2024, found that young people's mental health may depend on how they use social media, rather than how much time they spend using it. 3 groups in the experiment showed different outcomes based on usage style. This aligns with the active-passive research. It's not just screen time, it's what you're doing during that screen time. People who don't post are using social media differently. They're not seeking validation. They're not comparing themselves. They're not performing. They're consuming information, staying loosely connected, maybe getting entertainment, but they're not emotionally invested in outcomes. And that emotional distance, that boundary, protects their mental health. Studies on emotional regulation show that people who can observe without engaging, who can be present without reacting, tend to have better mental health outcomes. It's a form of self-control. Psychologists link this to emotional maturity. You're not avoiding life. You're choosing your battles wisely. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And here's what might be most important. The non-posters have richer internal lives. Research shows that people who express less online often express more internally. They journal. They reflect. They think deeply. They process experiences privately. Psychologists describe this as high internal stimulation, when your mind provides enough activity and satisfaction that external validation becomes less necessary. These people might find themselves thinking through experiences in silence, replaying conversations, considering multiple perspectives, creating mental narratives that help them understand themselves and the world, and while others post for attention, they process for understanding. The external world is noisy, their internal world is rich. Compare that to the average social media user. Studies show constant posting can interrupt introspection because attention goes outward, toward presentation, perception, performance. There's no time to think deeply when you're constantly broadcasting. The non-posters redirect that attention inward. They use life's experiences to grow, not to craft an online narrative. This connects to life satisfaction research. Studies consistently show that people who engage in regular self-reflection report higher life satisfaction and better mental health. They understand themselves better. They make decisions aligned with their values. They feel more authentic. And authenticity, being true to yourself, is one of the strongest predictors of well-being. People who don't post online tend to live authentically offline. They don't curate themselves. They don't feel pressure to maintain an online persona. They're the same person in every context. This psychological integration, when your different selves align, reduces cognitive dissonance and internal conflict. You're not managing multiple versions of yourself. You're just you. Research on happiness shows that subjective well-being has multiple facets: global life satisfaction, domain-specific satisfaction, positive beliefs about life, and frequent positive emotions. People who don't post seem to score well across these domains because their happiness isn't dependent on external validation. They find satisfaction in their work, their relationships, their hobbies, things they control. A study examining life satisfaction and happiness in working adults found that self-assessment of health, mental health, and relationship quality were the strongest contributors to both happiness and life satisfaction. Social media metrics didn't appear anywhere because happiness is internal. It's how you feel about your life when no one's watching. And the people who don't post, they're comfortable with who they are when no one's watching. Let's look at the darker side for contrast. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok have stronger links to anxiety and self-esteem issues, especially among young users. The heavy visual content creates constant comparison. Research shows 46% of teens aged 13 to 17 say social media made them feel worse about their body image. Office of the Surgeon General reported this in 2023. Nearly half of teen girls feel inadequate because of what they see online. More than 1/3 of girls aged 11 to 15 say they feel addicted to a social media platform. Addiction, at 11 years old, that's not casual use, that's compulsive behavior driven by dopamine loops engineered into the platforms. The algorithms reward posting, sharing, engaging. They punish silence. So kids learn early that their worth is measured in likes. But the kids who don't post, who never learn to play that game, they're developing differently. They're building self-worth through real achievements, through friendships that aren't quantified, through experiences that can't be reduced to engagement metrics. And research suggests this foundation is more stable. A meta-analysis of studies on social media and mental health found that passive activity, reading posts without engaging, is more strongly associated with depression than active use, like making posts. But here's the nuance. That's for people who are passively consuming as a replacement for real connection. If you're scrolling because you're lonely, it makes you lonelier. But if you're scrolling because you're curious, informed, entertained, and you have strong offline connections, passive use doesn't harm you. The people who don't post tend to fall into the latter category. They have offline lives. Social media is supplementary, not central. They're not using it to fill a void. They're using it the way you'd read a magazine, like consumption. Then you move on with your day. Research from Nature Human Behavior, published in March 2025, examined adolescents with mental health conditions using nationally representative UK data. 3,340 participants, aged 11 to 19. Adolescents with mental health conditions spent more time on social media and were less happy about their number of online friends than adolescents without conditions. The relationship runs both ways. Mental health struggles increase social media use, and social media use can worsen mental health struggles. But for people who maintain boundaries, who don't post, who don't seek validation online, this feedback loop doesn't start. They're not using social media as a coping mechanism. They're not turning to it when they feel bad. They have other resources, other outlets. And those outlets, exercise, hobbies, face-to-face conversation, are proven to improve mental health more effectively than any amount of scrolling. Studies on offline experiences and life satisfaction consistently show that real-world activities predict happiness better than digital activities. Hosting a dinner, taking a walk, playing a sport, creating something with your hands. These produce lasting satisfaction because they engage you fully. They require presence. They create real memories, not content. People who don't post prioritize these experiences. They're not thinking about how to photograph their dinner. They're tasting it. They're not posing for the perfect hiking shot. They're looking at the view. Research on mindfulness shows that full presence, being completely in the moment, reduces stress and increases happiness. It's impossible to be fully present when part of your brain is thinking about your Instagram story. Here's another critical factor: sleep. Late night scrolling reduces melatonin production, making it harder to fall asleep. Blue light from screens interferes with sleep cycles, leading to fatigue and decreased focus during the day. Research shows 45% of teens say social media hurts the amount of sleep they get. Poor sleep is linked to mood disorders, academic struggles, and reduced ability to manage stress. People who don't post tend to have healthier relationships with their phones. They're not checking them every 5 minutes. They're not scrolling in bed. They can put the phone down and go to sleep. And that sleep, the restoration it provides, contributes enormously to mental health and life satisfaction. Studies show that people who sleep well report higher life satisfaction, better mood, more resilience to stress, and people who don't post, who maintain boundaries around screen time, who don't let notifications control their lives, they sleep better. It's that simple. Now, you might think, but what about connection? Don't we need social media to stay in touch? Research addresses this. A study on social media and social displacement found that relationships maintained primarily through social media are thinner than relationships maintained through real contact. Social media can supplement real relationships, but it's a poor substitute. People who don't post seem to understand this instinctively. They use social media to stay loosely aware of people's lives, but they maintain close relationships through calls, visits, real time spent together. And research shows those close relationships, the ones built on genuine intimacy and trust, are what predict happiness and longevity, not your follower count. A study on emotional well-being and relationships across 12 nations found that people in good relationships experienced higher emotional well-being and life satisfaction than singles, but relationship quality mattered more than status. Bad relationships were just as harmful as being alone. The key factor was genuine connection, vulnerability, support, things you can't get from liking someone's post. People who don't post invest their relational energy offline. They have fewer but deeper connections. Research supports this pattern. Studies show that people with a small circle of close friends report higher life satisfaction than people with large networks of acquaintances. Quality over quantity, depth over breadth. And here's the evolutionary angle. Humans evolved in small groups. Dunbar's number suggests we can maintain about 150 stable social relationships. Social media pushes us beyond that. We're exposed to thousands of people, their lives, their opinions, their drama. It's cognitively overwhelming. Our brains aren't built for it. The people who don't post are living more in line with our evolutionary design. Smaller circles, deeper bonds, real presence. And research on stress shows that this alignment, living in ways our biology supports, reduces anxiety and improves well-being. We're not meant to perform for thousands of strangers. We're meant to belong to small groups where we're known and valued. If you value documented research on mental health and social behavior like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script uses data from the Journal of Medical Internet Research published in October 2024, examining 15,836 UK adults. Nature Human Behavior study published in March 2025, analyzing 3,340 UK adolescents with diagnostic assessments, and peer-reviewed meta-analyses examining hundreds of studies across multiple continents and age groups. These aren't anecdotes. These are large-scale, controlled studies with statistical rigor. Now back to the information. Let's talk about what the non-posters gain that's harder to measure. Mystery. In a world where everyone's life is laid out for public consumption, the people who stay private maintain an element of intrigue. You don't know everything about them from scrolling their profile. You have to actually talk to them, ask questions, spend time together, get to know them through experience, not through curated posts. Research on relationship formation shows that curiosity and discovery are crucial for building connection. When you already know someone's entire life from their Instagram, there's less to discover. The relationship starts halfway through the story, but with people who don't post, every conversation reveals something new. It's the difference between reading someone's Wikipedia page and actually meeting them. This mystery also protects them from judgment. Social media creates permanent records. Old posts can resurface. Comments can be screenshotted. Opinions shared at 22 can haunt you at 32. But people who don't post don't leave that trail. They're not worried about their digital footprint because they're not creating one. Their past stays private. Their evolution stays personal. Research on cancel culture and public shaming shows that social media amplifies judgment and conflict. Private disputes become public, ambiguous posts get misinterpreted, comments get taken out of context, conflict intensifies. People who don't post avoid much of this. They're not enmeshed in digital drama. They're not defending themselves in comment sections. They sleep better. Studies show that lower conflict and drama correlate with better mental health. It's not complicated. When you're not constantly managing your public image or responding to criticism, your stress levels drop. You can focus on your actual life instead of your online reputation. Another benefit, freedom from algorithmic manipulation. Social media platforms use sophisticated algorithms to keep you engaged. They track what you like, what you linger on, what makes you react. They feed you more of it. They create filter bubbles, echo chambers. They show you content designed to provoke emotion, often outrage or envy, because emotion drives engagement. People who don't post are less susceptible to this manipulation. They're not chasing engagement metrics. They're not trying to game the algorithm. They can see the patterns more clearly because they're not invested in the outcomes. And research on media literacy shows that awareness of manipulation reduces its effectiveness. The non-posters see the strings. They know they're being played, so they don't play along. There's also the question of identity formation. Research on adolescent development shows that identity is built through experimentation, feedback, and integration. You try different versions of yourself and see what fits. But when you're constantly posting, that experimentation happens publicly. You're performing identity rather than discovering it. And the feedback you get, likes, comments, follows, can distort the process. You might lean into versions of yourself that get engagement, even if they don't feel authentic. People who don't post explore identity privately. They can try things, change their minds, evolve without an audience. They're not locked into a public persona they created at 15. They have the freedom to grow without explaining themselves to strangers. And research shows that authentic identity development, figuring out who you are based on internal values rather than external feedback, leads to higher life satisfaction and psychological well-being. Let's consider productivity. The average social media user spends 2 hours and 21 minutes on platforms daily. That's 14% of waking hours if you sleep 8 hours. Now add the time spent thinking about social media when you're not on it, checking notifications, composing posts in your head, worrying about engagement. It adds up. People who don't post reclaim that time and mental energy. Research on cognitive load shows that constant task switching, checking your phone, scrolling, returning to work, reduces productivity and increases errors. You think you're multitasking, but you're actually fragmenting your attention. The non-posters don't have that cognitive drain. When they're working, they're working. When they're with people, they're present. The result? Higher quality output and deeper relationships. Studies on flow states show that deep work requires uninterrupted focus. Flow is when you're completely absorbed in an activity, losing track of time, performing at your peak. It's deeply satisfying. It builds skills. It creates meaning. But you can't reach flow if you're checking your phone every 10 minutes. The non-posters protect their flow states. They do deep work. They experience that satisfaction. And research shows that people who regularly experience flow report significantly higher life satisfaction. There's also physical health. Studies show that excessive social media use correlates with sedentary behavior. You're sitting, scrolling, not moving. Combine that with poor sleep from blue light exposure and stress from constant comparison, and you get measurable health impacts. Higher cortisol, inflammation, weakened immune function. People who don't post tend to be more active offline. They're not killing time on their phones. They're walking, cooking, playing sports, engaging in hobbies that require physical movement. And research on physical activity and mental health shows a strong bidirectional relationship. Exercise improves mood. Better mood increases motivation to exercise. It's a positive feedback loop, one that's hard to start if you're spending hours on social media. Now let's address the counter-argument. Social media can provide benefits. It can help people find community, especially marginalized groups. It can spread information. It can maintain long-distance relationships. These are real. But notice who benefits most. People using platforms intentionally, for specific purposes, with clear boundaries. Not people mindlessly scrolling or compulsively posting. The non-posters often fall into the intentional use category. They might check social media to see event details or stay loosely aware of friends' lives, but they're not there for validation or to kill time. They have a purpose. They get what they need and leave. Research on intentional media use shows it's associated with better outcomes than passive or habitual use. A study on social media motives found that socialization and entertainment motivations were more prevalent but less associated with adverse outcomes. Habit and mood management, using social media to escape boredom or regulate emotions, were the strongest predictors of problematic use. The non-posters aren't using social media as an emotional crutch. They have other ways to manage mood and boredom. Healthier ways. Let's talk about the future. Current trends show increasing awareness of social media's harms. Australia legislated restrictions on young people under 16 accessing social media, starting in 2025. Similar measures are being discussed in the United States and United Kingdom. Governments are recognizing that unfettered access might harm developing minds. Meanwhile, users are self-regulating. 44% of teens tried to cut back in 2024. Studies show that even small reductions in use, down to 30 minutes daily, produce measurable mental health improvements. The tide is turning, and the people who never posted, they were ahead of the curve. They understood early what research is now confirming. Social media, used carelessly, can harm you. It can make you anxious, depressed, lonely. It can fragment your attention. It can steal your time. It can turn your life into performance. But if you maintain boundaries, if you watch without participating, consume without creating, observe without performing, you can sidestep most of the harm. Research from 2025 examining social media interventions found that therapy-based approaches were more effective than limiting use or full abstinence. 83% of therapy studies showed improvements in mental well-being compared to 20% of abstinence studies. The key is how you relate to social media, not just whether you use it, and the non-posters have a healthy relationship by default. They're not emotionally dependent. They're not seeking validation. They're in control. Studies consistently show that internal locus of control, feeling that you control your life rather than being controlled by external forces, predicts better mental health and higher life satisfaction. The non-posters have that control. Social media doesn't dictate their mood. Algorithms don't decide their self-worth. They're autonomous agents in their own lives. Here's what it comes down to. 5.24 billion people are on social media. Most are posting, chasing engagement, performing their lives for an audience. They're spending hours daily in a game where the house always wins. The platforms profit from your attention. You pay with your time, your mental health, your sense of self. But there's another way, the way of the non-posters, the lurkers. The ghosts, they're watching without being watched, learning without teaching, present without performing, and the research suggests they might be onto something. Lower anxiety, less depression, better sleep, stronger relationships, more time, deeper focus, authentic identity, internal validation. They're not missing out. They're opting out of a system designed to make them feel inadequate, so they'll keep scrolling, keep posting, keep seeking the validation that never quite satisfies. They've found satisfaction elsewhere. In real conversations, in hobbies pursued for their own sake, in relationships built on genuine intimacy, in the quiet knowledge of who they are when no one's watching. That might be the most radical thing you can do in 2025. Exist without proving it. Live without documenting it. Be happy without broadcasting it. Let your life be full and rich and meaningful without turning it into content. The non-posters have been doing this all along, quietly, invisibly, sanely. The data doesn't lie. The University of Pennsylvania study showed it in 2018. Pew Research confirmed it in 2025. Nature published it. Journal of Medical Internet Research reported it. Meta-analyses across 141 studies found patterns. 15,836 UK adults showed it in longitudinal data. 3,340 adolescents demonstrated it with clinical assessments. The people who don't post are living better, not because they're superior, not because they're smarter, but because they've maintained boundaries in a world designed to erase them. They've protected their attention in an attention economy. They've preserved their authenticity in a performance culture. They've chosen presence over documentation, connection over broadcast, reality over curation. And here's the final data point that reframes everything. Researchers found that reducing social media use helps people feel less lonely. Let that sink in. The tool designed to connect us makes us lonelier. The platform meant to share our lives makes us feel more isolated. The feeds full of friends make us feel friendless. And the people who recognized this early, who opted out of the performance, who stopped posting, who started living, they found the connection we're all searching for. Just not where the platforms told them to look. It was always offline. In the room with actual people. In conversations without screens. In experiences lived fully instead of filtered perfectly. The non-posters knew. The research confirmed. And now you know too. The people who don't post anything might actually be the ones living the most.